Hello everyone, welcome to Unit 8, Introduction to Criminology. This is Chapter 10 in your textbook, carrying on from Unit 7 where we talked about deviance and moving into criminology. This is a longer section. It does have 3 sections to it, so be sure to give yourself enough time. So what will you learn in this video? Define crime and what the study of criminology looks at, the elements of a criminal act, the measurement of crime, misrepresentation of crime in the media, and the classification of crime. So this section is an introduction to criminology. You may choose to pursue a degree in criminology in your future studies. So what is criminology? Criminology is a scientific approach to the study of crime. It studies the causes, patterns, and trends of crime, examines how crime is socially constructed, considers structural factors in the criminalization of behaviors and the prevention of crime, and examines the punishment of crime. So what is crime? Crime is any act formally prohibited by criminal law in the Criminal Code of Canada and is punishable with fines, jail terms, and other sanctions which are specified in the Criminal Code of Canada.
Today we're going to look at the elements of crime. The 2 fundamental elements that need to be proved for something to be a crime are mens rea and actus reus. These are both Latin terms meaning guilty mind and guilty act. Let's look at mens rea to start. This is the hardest element to prove because it has to do with the mind, and we can't always tell what people are thinking or what they know. Fundamentally, mens rea looks at the motive and intent of the person who's accused of committing the crime. In order to prove mens rea, you need to show A, that they meant to do it, and B, that a reasonable person would have been aware of the consequences of their actions. You might be sitting there at this point thinking to yourself, well, how are they going to prove that I meant to go over the speed limit in my car? Well, that's an example of what's called a strict liability offence. These are offences where you don't need to prove mens rea. That's because they're usually summary or less serious offences, and there's a greater volume of these. The logic goes, if you have your driver's licence, you should always have control of the car, and it's assumed knowledge that you are to obey the speed limit. So we don't care if you meant to or not, you shouldn't have been speeding. Essentially, this speeds up the process of those people being charged with those types of offences. Now let's look at actus reus. This element of a crime is usually much easier to prove and comes down to the simple fact, did they actually do it? And usually the answer is much easier to find out due to physical evidence, witness testimony, and forensics. Again, you might be sitting there thinking, well, maybe they can prove that I did an act. That doesn't actually mean that the consequences of that act were caused by my actions. This question is a subset of actus reus, and it's called causation. In other words, was the crime a direct consequence of their actions? Or perhaps was it merely an unfortunate coincidence, or caused by something completely unrelated? For example, I might be angry with my uncle at Christmas and hit him with a baseball bat and he has a heart attack and dies. Now there's every chance that that's what caused the heart attack. But perhaps my uncle was incredibly unfit and would have had a heart attack anyway. Or perhaps we have a really strong family history of heart attacks, in which case that needs to be taken into account as to whether I'm charged with just assault or with manslaughter. In other words, did hitting him with the bat cause him to die, or was it an unrelated consequence? In order to prove actus reus, you need a direct link from action to result. So in any court case, the prosecution is trying to prove mens rea and actus reus, because they're the 2 fundamental elements of a crime. This has been another video for the crime series from Wimbledon Channel.
So with mens rea and intent, it's a general principle of criminal law that both the physical act, the actus reus, and the guilty mind, mens rea, must be present at the same time for a crime to have occurred. Somebody can be not criminally responsible, NCR, if they're not able to form intent. So who would that be? Who is not criminally responsible because they're not able to form intent? So here's a case study. When does mens rea occur? So you've just finished playing dodgeball and you head back to the locker room to take a shower. You throw your dirty clothes and shoes in your gym bag, and when you get home, you take your clothes and shoes out of the bag and realize that these are not your shoes, and what you've mistakenly picked up are someone else's shoes. You throw them on the floor thinking you'll take them back next week to the locker room. In the morning, campus security shows up at your door, alleging you stole someone's shoes. At what point in this scenario did mens rea happen? Well, think about that. When did it happen? When you get home, you take your clothes and shoes out of the bag and realize that these are not your shoes and they have mistakenly picked up someone else's shoes. That's the point at which mens rea has occurred. So how do we measure crime? There are two main ways Statistics Canada measures crime in Canada. One is called the Uniform Crime Reporting Survey, or the UCR, and this uses official police stats of reported crimes. So these are crimes that are reported to the police. We know that many crimes are not reported. So to counter that, there's also the General Social Survey of Victimization, the GSS. This is a survey that's conducted every 5 years by Statistics Canada, and it asks Canadians to self-report victimization for 8 different offense types. So surveys Canadians on their experiences with 8 types of offenses, which are violent victimization, including sexual assault, robbery with weapon or threat, or physical assault, theft of personal property, so theft or attempted theft of personal property such as money, credit cards, clothing, jewelry, purse, or wallet. Unlike robbery, the offender does not confront the victim. Household victimization, break and enter, theft of motor vehicle or parts, theft of household property, or vandalism. So with police-reported crime rates indicate that property crimes outnumber violent crimes. Reported crime rates steadily decreased from 1992 to 2012, and crime rates have had a mild increase in the last few years. You can click on the link in the PowerPoint to review the recent crime rates, and this is from Statistics Canada. I'm going to show you the link now. When you open the link, you'll see Chart 2, Police-Reported Crime Rates in Canada, 1962 to 2022. So I'm going to show you this first chart here. The way you read these is rates per 100,000 people. So this on the left would be for 100,000 people. For example, St. Catharines has a population of about 140,000 people. Welland has a population of about 55,000 people. So this is per 100,000 people, and the years are at the bottom. The dark blue line is total. Red are property crimes. Light blue are violent crimes. And the gray are other crimes. So depending on which year you're interested in finding out about, let's go to 2000. You can find out what the violent crime rate was in 2000. That's 2001, sorry. Other crimes, property crimes, and total crimes. Police-reported crimes in Canada from 1962 to 2022. This is the rate per population, so it gives it to you in a different format. So we looked at, sorry, this is going to make you dizzy. 2000, use the same numbers. So feel free to take a look at that website. So nationwide, in 2021 in Canada, there were 788 homicides, and those were homicides reported to the police. Compared with 2020, the national homicide rate increased by 3% to 2.06 homicides per 100,000 of the population. So if we look at this graph, for example, in Ontario, in 2021, there were 277 homicides. This is a change from 2020 of 37 homicides, meaning there were 37 more people killed in 2021 than in 2020. 25 additional people in British Columbia. The problems with crime statistics is most crimes go unreported. The actual crime rate is 3 times higher than the reported crime rate. And crimes like sexual assault are even less likely to be reported. So the dark figure of crime is the actual number of criminal intents that occur compared to the number of crimes reported to the police. The number of crimes prosecuted and the number of crimes that result in conviction. Only a small fraction of all law-breaking behavior is reported, investigated, prosecuted, and results in formal punishment. Most crimes go undetected. Official crime statistics reflect only those arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. The largest group of criminals are those that go undetected. Most crime in data is biased. Concentration on street crime and violent crime over occupational crime and corporate crime. And occupational crimes and corporate crimes do happen and are increasing. There's a belief that there is a misrepresentation of crime in the media. You may have heard the expression, if it bleeds, it leads, meaning that more graphics, more violence is what is going to sell. And violent TV shows and movies, games have been a part of generations. So whether you watch Dexter or Sons of Anarchy or NCIS, it's all how we process violence and violent crimes in our society. Consequences: stereotype violent offenders as strangers. So violent crimes are most often committed by relatives, friends, and acquaintances. Intimate partner violence. Overrepresentation of violent crime. In general, Canadians believe that 75% of crime is violent, when in fact it's actually less than 10%. There's a fear of violent crime, and it's more intense than risk justifies. So people are more afraid of violent crime than there actually are violent crimes. Types of street crime. When people think of crime, they most often think of street crime. These crimes occupy most of the time of the criminal justice system. All street crime does not occur in the street. It frequently occurs in the home, workplace, and other locations. These crimes occupy most of the time of police officers. Violent crime involves force or the threat of force against others, including murder, sexual assault, robbery, and aggravated assault. Violent crimes are probably the most anxiety-provoking of all criminal behavior. Victims are often physically injured or even lose their lives, and the psychological trauma may last for years. Violent crime receives the most sustained attention from law enforcement officials and the media. While much attention may be given to the violent stranger, the vast majority of violent crime victims are injured by someone they know, family members, friends, neighbors, or co-workers. And that's from a study by Silverman and Kennedy, and that result continues to be shown in more recent studies. Property crimes include break and enter, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. While violent crime receives the most publicity, property crime is much, much more common. Moral crimes involve an illegal action voluntarily engaged in by the participants, such as illegal gambling, the use of illegal drugs, and illegal pornography. Many people assert that such conduct should not be labeled as a crime. These offenses are often referred to as victimless crimes because they involve exchange of illegal goods or services among willing adults. Another type of crime is white-collar crime. White-collar crimes are committed by high-status people, often in the course of their work. They include fraud, forgery, tax evasion, price fixing, work safety violations, and embezzlement. And often when there is a white-collar crime, it's high profile and it's in the news. Coming up next in Unit 8, why? Why do people commit crimes? And again, this is Chapter 10 in your textbook.